Well, I sure do empathize with Mitch Hedberg coming on the stage because, all the faces except for mine are in the opposite direction and it is freaking me out actually. So I kind of suffer from stage fright. So I'll be walking around the stage, I'll be looking at my feet and I'll be trying to avoid eye contact. So if I look your way, please look away. So thanks a lot. All right. So we go to 1609. This is from a play called The Life of Galileo. It's a scene one by Bertolt Brecht. So what's going on here is that Galileo has got a telescope right now. It was made in Amsterdam somewhere, and he has got his hands upon a telescope, and he's going to set out to prove that the heliocentric model, that the sun is still and the earth is on the move. So this is 1609, and some 2000 years if we roll back, this guy in Greece called Anaximander, he said that the earth, it's a cylinder and it's the center of the universe, of everything rather, and the sun and the stars, they revolve around it. So not often what we say is true eventually, but what is to be commended is the initiative or the task undertaken. So the resources that Anaximander had at his time, he was way ahead. So even if he was wrong, but you have to commend the task that was undertaken by him. So as I mentioned Bertolt Brecht, let this be a heads up. During the course of this talk, I might try to alienate you. So just stay. So introduction, where do I come from? In the morning I came from the NSIT hostel. Otherwise I stay in Dehradun, that's my hometown. And earlier I was studying engineering in DCE, which is in Delhi itself. It's the sister institution of NSIT. And I dropped out after my second year. So people often ask me, like, 2 years, it's a waste of time. I mean, why did you drop out so late? So 11th, 12th, I was preparing for the engineering entrances. I believe in my first 2 years, I was preparing for studying in an open university. The foremost thing is not to attend classes because there are no classes in open university, which I wasn't doing in DCE. And for the last whole year, since I have to just give my exams in December, so I was really traveling, not by choice, but since my mother is staying in Dehradun, my father is posted in Darjeeling, and my brother is working in Bangalore. So for 3 months each, I was at each of the place. I was reading books, I was watching films, and people often, give me the handle of a quizzer, as I've been quizzing, and this college has a great quizzing tradition. I've been on this stage for the past 4 years I've been coming here. I really enjoy to quiz. It's a passion, though I don't like to be identified like my handle as a quizzer. So quizzing it's just, few things about it would be like the times when you know the answer. It's a brilliant feeling when somebody, it will come to you and you'll answer it. It's something that you know, and you get that adrenaline rush inside you. And there are also times, there are things that you don't know. And when those things get answered and somebody tells you about it, it's a humbling experience. And I have come across some brilliant minds from this college only and other places who have really humbled me, and I've learned a lot from them. Where am I going? Well, I don't like to think very beyond, but I'll say Spain, because I just got through an exchange program in IGNOU, which I really didn't know about, that IGNOU had such exchange programs. And I'll be going to Spain for 6 months starting from this September. And the MOU they have signed, the aim of that MOU is to bridge the cultural ties of the two nations. So as I'll be interning at the International Relations Office there, so I'll be working every day towards bridging the cultural ties. So I'll be watching Spanish films, reading Spanish literature and art, even thinking about the art I'm going to expose to It makes me, feel like really, really nauseous, I would say. Like it's the Stendhal syndrome, as they say. So I would say, yes, I'm looking forward to going to Spain, and this summers I'm thinking I'll learn Spanish, obviously, and cooking, and probably flamenco, just to be a better man if I go there. So yes, this is a painting by Peter Bruegel the Elder. So what it shows here is the fall of Icarus and the indifference of the people around. The plowman keeps plowing. The bottom is the Auden poem on the same thing, and the ship sails on. So there's nothing, that amazes them. The boy has like fallen from a sky, and it's like not big a deal for them. In the sense, there are people who will stay indifferent even if you like don't, succeed or something. And but there are also people who are like really, really like, they want to know what you're going to do in life, what's ahead and what's not. I've come across a few of them who want to know what I'm studying, like aesthetics, and where do I see myself like 10, 20 years afterwards. How will I make a living studying arts and all. So it's not that I'm not doing anything. I do think about things. And now we'll take a detour of what I usually think about, and I've been thinking about the past year. It's the postmodernism. I've been often infatuated by this art and literary movement, and started in the middle of the 20th century. It had its roots in Dadaism. So this is Marcel Duchamp's Dadaist works, and this is around 1920s. And the thing is, he's made a urinal which can be used as a fountain, and that's a Mona Lisa, and he's drawn a mustache and a goatee on it. And below that, if you can see, it's written LHOOQ. It's a pun. It's a French pun. It means she's got a hot ass. So it's rather crude humor. And what he's actually, making fun of or taking a dig at is how what an artist does becomes an art itself. Even if an artist spits, that's an art. So the joke there is that. But somehow these things, caught the media frenzy, and the people were crazy about them, and they went under the hammer, and they got sold for like really, really big prices. Or maybe people say that the real joke was that only, that making such art, they're making fun of it, and still it's selling, because they know. But whatever an artist does, it's an art. That's what they're making fun of, and still it's selling. So it did yield some bastardly sons, which we'll come across later. So this is what Umberto Eco in the postscript of Name of the Rose said about postmodernism. One of the key points of postmodernism is the inescapability of past. They say everything has been done before. So if a man has to say to a woman that he loves her madly, he can't, because he knows these words have been written by somebody else before. And if he says, he would not be, that innocent, and he'd be, paraphrasing somebody else who has done that before. So what can be done is he has to avoid the false innocence with the help of irony. There has to be, sort of a joke, not to be taken seriously. That is what the biggest critique of postmodernism is. That is what Francis Fukuyama says. Because since they're not serious about themselves, they're not to be taken seriously. Because their whole belief, their whole aim, it sort of undercuts itself. So, some of the famous examples are Andy Warhol's Campbell Soup, and this is Royal Lichtenstein. So you can see this is pop art, postmodern itself. The upper one is taking a dig at your mass consumerism and your mass production. And the bottom one, it's a dig at the sentimentality, the pathetic nature, and the melodramaticness. Oh Jeff, I love you too, but so. This is something I really want to talk about. This is postmodernism in cinema, and the perfect example that I can give is that of Jean-Luc Godard's 65 feature film called Pierre Le Fou. if you see, it has a very pop artish quality to it. And the colors, they play a major part. I don't know if it's as rich from there as I can see from here. The colors are a bit messed up. But there is like deep metaphysical color implications here, because the whole of the movie, it's very rich in color, and most of the colors are red, blue, and white, which are the colors of the French flag and the American flag itself, something which the director was, infatuated with. Why I'm saying this is the perfect example of postmodern cinema is why, because when Goda started his film career in '60, before the release of his first film, he was like, what he wanted to say was that everything before has been done in cinema. The same thing that somewhat Umberto Eco was echoing. So he said every sort of a film has been made. So there's nothing that he can do, and that was the starting point. So after making 4 or 5 films, he came back with he made Pere Le Fou, which kind of it was reminiscent of his older films, or the first 4 or 5 films. There's a wayward protagonist, Jean-Paul Belmondo, who was a wayward protagonist in his first film, Breathless. There's the scenic, picturesque beaches, which is there in the movie called Contempt. And there is Anna Karenina. She dances to she plays a song on a music player, jukebox, and she dances, which is again reminiscent of his previous film, A Band of Outsiders. The same thing happened. So this is like a perfect example of postmodernism in cinema. And this guy, in the end of the movie, he blows himself up. He commits a suicide. And in the next picture that Goda directed, most of his crew was changed. So it was like the rebirth. In literature, quite similar. It's called Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. This is more like the Mona Lisa we saw of Duchamp. It's really, the humor is rather caustic and bad in taste. It's about, it's set in post-World War II Europe, and Germans have got this V2 rocket which travels faster than the speed of sound, and there's chaos everywhere just because of the V2 rocket. The first cover really symbolizes that. Second cover I just put because it looks cool. So there are many phallic references. The V2 rocket, its launch and its explosion has been compared to an erection to an ejaculation. The humor is rather crude. As you can see, one of the main characters is infatuated with bananas. All he wants to eat is bananas. And this is parodying Warhol itself. So it's a rather complex book. I've only read 150 pages, and there's so much in the book that I've left it as now. I think I need to know a bit more about the 50s and the 40s to go any further. That's a quote from Gravity's Rainbow itself. So Jean-Luc Godard said, "He who jumps into the void owes no explanation to those who stand and watch." This is somewhat similar to what Slavoj Žižek says about postmodernism, that it is just about filling the gaps. The gaps that are left by your modernism is just filled by postmodernism. And in Hegelian sense, we can say that it is the antithesis of modernism, which is the thesis, and it leads to the synthesis, which again leads it yields the thesis, which is modernism, which would be more refined. Then another antithesis of postmodernism would come, which would be more crude, and this just goes on. I mean, my views on postmodernism, I want to hate it, but I can't because of the virtuosity of both of these works. I can't deny. So my views are still ambivalent towards it. We go back again to Bertolt Brecht in the life of Galileo. This is the final scene. Galileo was, he was tried for heresy, and he had to recant all he said. He had to disavow all his beliefs and principles, and he was put on house arrest. And he lived there for like 20 years, last years of his life. So in this scene, a former pupil of his comes to visit him, and he's lost respect for him because he thinks he didn't stand for his beliefs and principles, and just to save himself he recanted. So there Galileo, he gives him a couple of books that he's been working on and he's been hiding from the authorities, and he tells him to smuggle that out and get them published. So the pupil starts seeing him in a totally different light. He thinks he's the hero and he took the fall for the better of the humankind and all that stuff. To which Galileo responds that there is nothing heroic about it. He just did it for pure self-interest. He was just saving himself. That is something to be done. And in the similar vein, I would say, we'll come back to the titular question. Do as said. I'd say only and only if you want to, and in the right amount, I guess. That's about